You're still watching Breakfast Central on East Central Television, and right now we go straight to our top stories. Now, in the Raila Ruto dispute, here's an update. President William Ruto of Kenya has again insisted that there will be no handshake between himself and Azimio leader Raila Odinga. Now, during a press conference in Kigali, Rwanda yesterday, Ruto said that the recent approach from his government to allow the Azimio Umoja One Kenya coalition to table their issues with them is not a way of bringing on board the opposition team.
Well, he maintained that there will be no handshake, but there will be an engagement in Parliament on the issues that have been raised. Added that those at the Parliament, most importantly, those the Parliament can actually resolve, will be resolved. Yes, he said so. And the President also said only mission was to ensure that the country's democracy is not undermined. So take note. Well, here is actually how Ruto described the handshake. By the way, he did break it down into bits and pieces. Hopefully we'll get that graphics there on the screen. But it's obvious he has said that. We've seen it in the front pages of the papers this morning. The Star has mentioned it. Not forgetting to, you did have the Daily also mentioning it, to making it clear that, listen, we will not go down that line, just as it was done in 2008 National Court discussions, where you would always have your say. You want to be part of the government in one way or the other, but still come out and say, listen, we don't want to be part of the government. I was fortunate to speak with the Secretary General for ODM. That's one of the coalition parties for the Azimio Umoja One coalition as well. Let's quickly see what William Ruto also mentioned. He said, unfortunately for us in Kenya, a handshake has a different connotation, and that is what I'm talking about. The handshake that brings the opposition and government into some conundrum and a mongrel and an outfit that is undemocratic, unconstitutional, and illegal. In other words, I will not shake your hand.
Feisty much.
Just take note. I will not. I will not.
But anyways, we have a little clip to play for you to show you what the discussions have been like. Do take a look.
It is not a question of who is right and who is wrong. In times like this, you have to put your house in order. And as president, I owe it to the people of Kenya to provide leadership. Because of this situation, I want to tell you, there will be no handshake. But there will be an engagement in Parliament on the issues that have been raised. Those that Parliament can resolve, they will be resolved.
Wow.
I wonder how Raila would feel right now.
I think he feels the same.
Handshake.
I think one person is just voicing out the opinions of both of them, because I think that they're head on with this, issues, and I think they really want to tackle it out, in their own separate ways. So bringing the settlement is not working for them, obviously.
So here are the things that are being mentioned. One, the cost of living has increased. That's what William Ruto has noted. Okay, that's fine. Cost of okay, that's fine. Let's move on. Raila Odinga says cost of living. He says cost of production has affected everybody, housing, you name that. He's also talked about a reason to be given, which is, let me check the server. I feel I won the elections. I know.
The court has declared.
So let me check the server.
I believe that the court won't just declare William Ruto the winner if they didn't do their proper investigation.
And Ruto says, you're not going to do that. So now he's saying, you know what, go to the Parliament. It's easy, just go. Stop protesting, stop adding more fire to what is being burnt already. It's burnt already. Don't add petrol to the fire. Don't make it hotter than what it is. And now he's come out officially. A lot of people were waiting for this conversation, and he's come out to say, listen, I'm not going to shake your hand. It's not going to happen. We're not going to go back to 2008, where I shake your hand. Of course, you still have a say. I don't want you to have a say in the running of the affairs of this country. Let me do my own thing. Playing
the devil's advocate now, I think that William Ruto has, a point when he says his responsibility is to the people, right? This is just a huge distraction in the government, right? So if he says he wants to focus on the people and he doesn't want all this, you know, chit-chat and labaloo, as they call it, then just let it lie.
It's a deep one, though, but let's still stay in Kenya. Let's quickly tell you this, that Kenya's president, by the way, William Ruto, has also, aside from making that statement, has advised citizens and investors to let go of a particular US dollar. Yes, he says, let go of the US dollar holdings, and its value is decreasing rapidly due to global factors such as the Russia-Ukraine war. Well, according to President Ruto, to reduce demand for foreign currency, his administration has mapped out measures that will enable oil importers to buy oil using shillings instead of dollars.
Now, the Kenyan government is collaborating with the Central Bank of Kenya to reform the interchange exchange market, helping the country regain control over its currency market. Now, we've seen what the wars in Ukraine has done to Kenya, and now they're saying that they will ditch the dollars if Kenya is not taking, and then they will trade in their own currency. But some are asking if this is the right way to go for the East African country. Well, we have someone who will join us to help us dissect this issue, and I'm talking about Professor X.N. Iraki, economist and faculty of the University of Nairobi. Thank you so much, Professor, for joining us.
Good morning.
Thank you.
I'm really enjoying your conversation on the handshake.
I'm sure it's something you'd like to jump on. Okay, maybe let's start off on that note first. What's your take on that handshake that has been called for endlessly?
It is interesting that something that is so African is becoming an issue in the Kenyan conversation. Because all you need to do is you shake somebody's handshake, and that shows clearly that that is your friend, that you are willing to interact with the person, you're willing to make friends. But in Kenya, the word handshake has a different meaning. It means you shake hands politically and you become part of the government. You take part in government decisions.
Oh, wow.
If possible, you influence who is going to be in certain position in the government, and if possible, you can influence directions. That's what making President Ruto very fearful of the handshake.
Interesting.
Very obvious, and that's why he's made it clear. He's come out to say, listen, no handshakes. I mean, recalling what took place in 2008. I mean, if you talk about the period of Uhuru Kenyatta, and of course we did see the influence. But let's leave that. Let's focus now on a sudden change in some of the African countries and what we're seeing. I'm excited to talk about this conversation because it's been part of the conversation I've had with a few Africans. I was talking to a friend in Ghana yesterday, and we were discussing, and we kept talking about, oh, the dollar, what's happening to the dollar, and he kept making some assertions and so on. So let's break it down. Let's focus on Kenya now. William Ruto has joined the train of many who are ditching the dollar. Let's look at the fact that the foreign exchange reserve is one aspect that is making the dollar to seem like it's not going to be very likely to be used in Kenya. What are your thoughts of William Ruto's statement, making it clear that, listen, if you do have dollar, don't hold it, or use it now, or better still, you're going to lose out because we'll stop using the dollar?
When I talk to the businessmen in Nairobi, they're always talking about the shortage of dollars. So it becomes very hard to import raw materials if you're a manufacturer. It becomes very hard to get dollars if you want to transact some foreign business. So people are talking about the shortage of dollars. But at the same time, there's this paradox that about $900 million that people are holding either in their boats, their banks or elsewhere, but they're not willing to spend it. So what President Ruto was telling Kenyans is, stop holding those dollars, put them in the market. But people are not willing to do that because they fear the shortage of the dollar. So if you have some dollars, you keep it because you don't know whether you get the dollars when you go to the market. To me, one reason why that is happening is that people are not very sure about the direction the economy is taking. But as soon as we get confidence in the economy, I'm sure people are going to take their dollars to the market. There will be no shortage of dollars. It's an interesting case because the more people keep the dollars, the higher the price goes. And the more you are incentivized to keep the dollar because you get more money. So it's an interesting case. The president has told people to take dollars to the market, but he has also advised that the interbank market should be revived so that banks can get dollars among themselves. So there has been a shortage of dollars in this country, and some of the causes are beyond our control. like the rising interest in the US, the war in Ukraine. But I think the president is using his political position to try and make us put dollars in markets, that we have a shortage, so that we reduce the shortage. And that's, if we get more dollars in the market, then the Kenyan shilling is going to become stronger. And the rising price of goods and services that the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is talking about can be mitigated.
All right, Professor, let's not forget why some countries trade in the dollar. Now, the dollar is known to be the most redeemable and trustworthy currency. So people are asking, and this is a question that begs for answers, is this the right way to go? We understand that there is a shortage of the dollar, but is it okay to just scrap it out and depend solely on the Kenyan shillings?
I think that is easier said than done. People have tried to get rid of the dollar in the past, but they have not been very successful. If you look at countries like China, they have RMB. It's not as exchangeable as the dollar. If you look at the Russian ruble, it's not as exchangeable as the dollar, or even a currency like the Indian rupee. So I think politically and psychologically, it's a very good idea to dream of that one day we shall get rid of the dollar. I don't think we are going to do that anytime soon. If you look at the Kenyan situation, the American ambassador was giving a very nice speech last week about how American investors are going to come to Kenya and come to Africa. I don't think they are going to come and trade in the Kenyan shilling. They want to use the dollar. So I think it's a good idea, but that is the wrong line. In the short run, we are going to be dependent on the dollar for some time.
All right, what say you about the recent uprising of African countries coming together to form a conglomerate or in adding to the existing one, talking about BRICS, where South Africa, of course, joining forces with the likes of, talk about India, and not forgetting to Russia and the likes, to ditch the use of the dollar. Rather, they want to focus on using the currency that will be best to transact business and, of course, engage in exchanges in terms of what is acceptable and what is not. Do you think that this is equally affecting the way other African countries are starting to see the progression that's been made by the BRICS, and not forgetting to countries like Saudi Arabia as well?
It's not just the African countries. It's a worldwide issue. Most people feel that the dollar has too much power. The dollar affects how we trade and how the currencies behave. And this issue of BRICS starting to use alternative currencies probably has origin in Russia. Because when Russia was slammed with the sanctions by Europeans and Americans, they must have started thinking about the alternative. And because we have always traded in the dollar, then a competitor for the dollar would, to the mind of many people, make the world more competitive and probably emancipate us from the shackles of the dollar. So I think it's not just in Africa, it's a worldwide issue of people feeling that the dollar is too strong, the dollar has too much control over our lives, and if we can get an alternative currency, the better. The question is how soon we are going to do that, and how easy it is to do that, because I don't believe Americans will just sit and watch as we move away from the dollar. They probably have certain policy decisions they can make sure that we still remain dependent on the dollar. But I think personally, from my own point of view, the dollar would be good. It would be good if we gave dollar a competitor. It would be good for the global economy.
All right, Professor, I mean, we also see, I mean, it's no news that the US and China are having some kind of rivalry when it comes to involvement in the African country and the African economy. Recently, we saw that the Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris, visited some African countries, and it was in the bid to, broker a relationship for whatever reason. So what impact would this have? I mean, it's obviously a setback for the United States. What impact do you think it will have? You just mentioned that you don't think that they will sit back and watch countries ditch the US dollar. So what impact do you think this will have if it actually goes through, if Kenya and some other countries can get rid of the US dollar for good?
I think that the first impact will be the US influence will be reduced in Africa, because one of the ways you influence other countries is by using their dollar, or using their language, or using their culture. So if the dollar could be get rid of, we'll probably see the US influence being fading in Africa. There has always been that competition between China and the US, particularly in Kenya. In fact, what we noted is as soon as we got the new president, he seemed to have turned towards the West as opposed to China. Now, we don't talk about China as much as we've been talking the last 10 or so years. So I see the US influence reducing in Africa. and that has effect in business. We probably might have more people from the East, from China, from Russia, and so on, investing in Africa as opposed to Americans. So it's going to make Africa a very contested continent. Probably what happened 100 years ago or more.
It's starting to look very exciting, I put it that way, because we're starting to see a lot of conversations surrounding this. The possibilities, why not, if not, should it go through, if it doesn't, how America is starting to strengthen its ties with other African countries, and how other African countries are also reacting to these things, and how China is starting to become a more laudable and strong force, especially penetrating the African continent. Lastly, in 30 seconds or less, what do you think of the partnership between Russia and China in infiltrating the African continent, especially looking at the purchase of relationship or the use of the yuan, especially in carrying out business?
If you look at the end of the Cold War, the US was left as the only superpower. And there has always been a feeling in many circles that the US should have a countervailing force. So by putting Russia and China together, we see a very good countervailing force for the US. We hope that's not going to lead the Cold War. And one way to deal with the US is not just by having Russia and China becoming more militarily stronger. They are probably having some economic agenda to make sure that we can stop, or we can stand up against the US dollar. We can stand up against the US investment in various parts of the world. So if you look at the military exercises Russia had with South Africa, that was quite surprising, but from a historical perspective, not very surprising. So I am seeing the next few years a big contest for Africa between the US and the Russia and China axis. How it is going to play out, we can only wait and watch. But it's going to be a very exciting phase in Africa.
I agree with you. Thank you so much for intelligently putting a spot on these questions, especially looking at the topic and the issues Kenya is facing. Thank you, Professor Axen Iraqi, for joining us all the way from
and thank you for also giving insight into what handshake really means in Kenya. I mean, I think it does put it in another different light, a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. We need our morning to discuss the handshake from the Kenyan perspective.
All right. So I'm extending my handshake.
I can also get a Nigerian perspective.
I'm extending my handshake to you. In Nigerian perspective, it's different. So we have the friendly handshake, which is just common. We have the other handshake, which has to do with business, you know. And then in the political sphere, we don't use words like handshake in Nigeria when it comes to politics.
To actually mean partnership, no. It just means like settlement.
Yeah, you know? We just use closed door. Closed door.
No, in Kenya,
closed door meetings.
Yeah, closed door.
Handshake is very pregnant in Kenya.
I can imagine.
That's insightful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great morning, by the way.
Same.
All right, then.